This is Absences, and thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. Today we're going to share with you an interview between Damon and Roy Kristensen, author of the legendary Imhotep fanzine and conductor of the final interview with the French black metal collective Deathspell Omega. They spoke primarily about his contact with Deathspell and why the fascination with this mysterious band is so strong amongst their fans. What makes them so special to Roy? How much or how little does the man in contact with them for 13 years know about their inner workings? The interview seems to end pretty abruptly, but this is because Roy wanted to go off the record for a few minutes with Damon. There, he shared what Damon described as incredibly interesting information that gave him a new appreciation of the band and how they operate. But, to honor Roy's request, Damon has kept the information to himself, and it will live on only in his memory. Special thanks to Roy for helping make this happen, and to our first patron, Tyler. You guys are awesome. If you'd like to support our work, check out the link to our Patreon in the description box below. Subscriptions start at just $2, and even a little bit will go a long way towards growing this channel and helping us put out the best possible content, beholden to no one but ourselves and our fans. If you'd like to support Roy and Imhotep, please consider doing so. His creative vision is uniquely his own, as you'll hear very soon, and his content is indicative of a truly passionate and thoughtful fan of the musicians he covers. Links to his work are also available in the description. Without further ado, we're proud to present our interview with Roy Kristensen.
When I did the interview with Deathspell Omega, they wanted it by text. I also recorded the questions by words if he wanted to hear, because then I said more than just the questions, you know, as you do when you speak. But I was having I didn't have any voice at all, so I don't think he managed to hear anything because it sounds so insane. But I had to do it once I got the thought, so that's the way it is. Yeah, okay. Just shoot.
Okay, all right, sounds good. So I'm more of an off-the-cuff kind of guy, but my co-authors did have a couple questions that they wanted to ask you. So I figured we'd start with those, if that's all right with you. Maybe that can lead into something else. Does that work?
Just shoot, and we see where we're going.
Okay. All right. So the first question he wanted me to ask you was if you could pick any three people, living or dead, to have a conversation with. Specifically about, black metal or, anything that's interesting to you professionally, personally, who would you pick?
Okay.
Listen into the conversation.
Yeah, is this connected to Deathspell Omega or to anything, whatever?
Whatever you would want to make it. Whatever, your personal influences, I guess. We're trying to get into who you are, what makes you tick.
Of course, I would like to sit down with at least one of the main guys in Deathspell Omega. I'm not sure how many main guys, because when they write about the collective, they mention the French core, but I don't know if that's 2 persons, 3 persons, 5 persons, 10 persons, but at least one of them, and just sit down and hear what they have to say instead of reading it. Just hear how they explain, because Deathspell Omega is at least to me much more than just music. So that would be very interesting to it could be a lecture for an hour, 2 hours or something, where they talk about everything they want to talk about and reveal. That would be interesting, of course. That's how much the music means to me. And of course, I also like, I don't know if you know Devil Doll, the Italian band, kind of.
Yeah.
This guy, he made 5 or 4 albums that we know of back in the 90s. I think the first one came out in 89 or 90, and the last one in 96. So during that period he recorded a lot of music. I heard that the last album, it lasts for 46 minutes. There are about 900 hours that are recorded, but he picked that to the album. So there is so much music, but this guy is very eccentric and had done maybe 2 interviews or something like that back in those days, and it would be very interesting to hear what he has to say about his music and everything, and why he stopped Devil Doll, in the sense that he doesn't release any more music. I don't know even if he make music, and I just read this year that he has turned into a Christian or Catholic, I suppose, since he's Italian, and he still, I guess, adores all of his work with Devil Doll, but he can't really do that kind of thing anymore because maybe it doesn't fit with his new religion or whatever, something like that. But that would be interesting to hear, because I understand music just the same you probably do your own way. I understand it my way, and then you have to go beyond that. Okay, I understand the music. The music will probably not change no matter what the artist tells me. But still, I'm very interested in to see if I get a further understanding. So of course, that with music it's very interesting. And if we still were to music, I would like to talk to, of course, Euronymous, and if he was still alive, and nobody knows what would happen with Mayhem after that and everything. So of course, that's interesting. I did speak with him on the phone, but then I was like 22 years living in the north of Norway. That's 1,500 kilometers away from Oslo. So it was like in the other end of the world. So when I spoke with him, I didn't understand much, and I was living in this. I come from this very, very small, tiny place with 500 inhabitants, so it's very small.
Wow.
Yeah, just out in the sea almost, and
right.
yeah. So, but that's the music. Of course, if there were anybody else, I would, of course, love to sit down and be lectured by Nietzsche. He has a lot of interesting things. I haven't read Nietzsche in many, many years, but when I read it, and such spoke Zarathustra is a wonderful poetic book. It would be very interesting to hear, and especially if he lived today, to hear what he thinks about today's world. That would be because he had so many things. Yeah. Just like George Orwell, 1984. What would he think about today when we are in 1984, basically, on many things? So yes, I think that those are that comes to my mind when you ask the question right now. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. No, those are definitely some good answers. Yeah, For my money, I'm not really sure who I would pick if I were to ask myself that question. I definitely would have one of the guys from Deathspell on there. I mean, do you know? I mean, I don't know how much you can even say, but I guess we can find that out along the way. Do you know the person who does the? I'm assuming it's one person. Is it one person that does the interviews for them? Do you know?
They have done 4 interviews, I think. No, five. I mean, the 3 now. 2 ones with Niklas and Bardo, and the one with me, of course. And then in 2004, they did one with Tyler from Anya. Yeah. And then I think in 1999 or 2000, I did one with Shaul. I don't know how to pronounce it, but
so they did one with Northern Heritage.
Yeah. I think they did one as far, but I can't remember having read that one. But it's just probably maybe some small interview. I don't know. They were pretty small back then, of course. And so I think those are the 5 interviews. I guess the main guy is the one who is maybe writing, since they are, as far as I know, haven't done any eye-to-eye interviews. I think this is the one main guy, and then he probably send it to selected persons who overview, and they think back and forth. And the reason I think that is not because he's told me, but because when I read the interview and the answers myself, I get the sense that they, as he says, there is a core, a French core, and then they have people in this second ring, to put it like that. And they have probably quite a few people, actually. Maybe there are 10 together, maybe there are 15. Somebody concentrate on this thing, somebody concentrate on the art, somebody on the lyrics, and to challenge the main writers. That's the impression I get. I have no idea if it's correct, but that's the impression I get when I read the replies. I get the impression that they and as he also wrote something about because everybody is, of course, with Mikko and the Nazi thing. I'm not even sure if it really is Mikko who does the. They have never said that it is, never said that it's not. But if it's Mikko and his extreme point of views and even the Nazi relations that somebody shout about. And on the other hand, they have people probably, at least was the way he wrote it, that people who are almost Christian, maybe even are Christian, or at least theological educated, and to challenge everything. If I remember correctly, there are quite a lot of references to so many texts in the lyrics, and Yeah, I'm not really, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But of course, I have the feeling that there is 1, 2, or 3 main guys.
Right.
Or girls,
Yeah.
for all that matter.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I think that's kind of the consensus, at least among people who are, really invested in their music and their art. So I'm part of the, Reddit.
Yeah.
I'm part of the, I'm pretty active on the Deathspell subreddit.
Yeah, you sent me the link.
Oh, that's right,
Yeah.
that's right. That I did. And so a lot of people have been speculating after the last few interviews, like, who might be in this band? What's the size? Just the kind of general things you were talking about there. I think the consensus seems to be, most people get the sense that it's somewhere between like 3 and 5 people at the core. Of course, nobody knows. But it seems like the speaking voice, when I say the speaking voice, I mean the writing voice of the person who's doing the interviews seems to have a pretty consistent thread. I went back. Did you know that there's I think it's 1998, 1997 maybe, interview with, I forget how to pronounce it, Hiralorn?
I don't know how to pronounce it, but I know how to write it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But there's an interview with them in a fanzine called Pagan Storm, and it was mentioned by name, so it was Hasiarl, who they named as Christian Boucher, and that, who apparently is a member. A lot of speculation has been made, but I think Luc Lemay.
If we should trust the Metal Archives.
yeah, Metal Archive. Luc Lemay said that as well. He said he met up with him in Canada or something like that at some point. But anyway, whoever it is, doesn't really matter. But it seems that Hasiarl's speaking voice, whenever he spoke in that interview, it definitely seems to carry this thread. And he uses very similar turns of phrase in that old interview that he carries up through all the other interviews. It's a very distinct manner of speaking. I'm under the impression that he is the one who actually does make you talk about it, just for that reason alone. His erudition, even back then, was pretty clear. So I don't know. I think it might be him. Somebody has said they get mail from, whenever they order from Norma Evangelium Diaboli, they get mail from a guy by the name of, I don't know how to pronounce it, but Stephanie Boucher. And a lot of people have been speculating for a lot of years, that the drummer was Christian's brother. I don't know where they got the information from, but I just saw somebody post that the other day. They were like, "Oh, this is from Stephanie Boucher from Norma Evangelium Diaboli." Maybe. I don't know how much we can really speculate, but it seems that a lot of the stuff we've been talking about over the years through these recent interviews, especially with your interview, has been confirmed, or at least hinted at. But yeah, anyway, that was a long tangent. But
What's the question? No, but I see your point, and I don't know the name of the brother, but that's probably correct. And I don't know who really is in the band, except that I think it's Hasiarl or whatever. It's all over the place, and everybody who mentions Deathspell Omega mentions him. And the Hiralorn thing, I never thought about that. I do have the album. They released a re-release of the LP some years ago. I don't know who released it, but I do have it, yes. And they released, I think, one album and a couple of smaller things, if I remember correctly. So I would like to read that interview, I must admit. I haven't not read it.
Yeah, I can. It's on the internet. I'll find it for you. It took some digging. I forget even how I stumbled upon it. It was by accident. And I found this. I was like, oh, this is fucking awesome.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But to the member thing, which is of course interesting to a lot of people, I guess. Even after all these years, after all these years, they have released album after album and EPs and mini LPs and splits, and still people are focusing on that. That's pretty. I think that's interesting. Why do we do that? I don't know why. I'm not so. If it is Christian and the information on the internet is correct and everything, I'm like, okay, do I really want to know what he eats for dinner? Do I want to know if he has a girlfriend or even a boyfriend? Do I want to know if he has a kid or not? Do I want to know if he loves his parents? what is it with people? And if you go a little bit back, just a few years now, some 5, 6, 3, 4 years maybe, the ghost thing, about how many people who wanted to know about the ghost thing, and the focus was not on the music, it was on the live appearance, on his masks, and who he was and who they were. That were the interesting thing. And to me, I mean, maybe it would be if I was 22 years old. I'm not sure. I never, when I was 22, or even 17, 18, I was never interested in who King Diamond was. I didn't care if he was Danish or South African, or if he was Colombian, or if he was American. The music was the interesting thing. But people are so interested in everything that surrounds it instead of the art, instead of concentrating on the art itself. I don't know. It's so strange. At the same time, I told you earlier that it would be nice to sit down and hear everything he thinks about or could reveal about Deathspell Omega, sitting in a bar or something somewhere or in a mountain or wherever, and just listen to what he has to say. So in that sense, I'm contradicting myself, but still I don't want to know what he eats for dinner and if he likes to take a beer every weekend.
Right.
So it's very strange with people, and okay, we know there are one-man bands, no doubt about that, but as far as I know, Deathspell Omega has a bassist, has a drummer, guitarist, maybe 2 for all that I know. They say I think it was in the first interview with Niklas and Bardo, I think they said that they even rehearse. And I think that's where I read it. But come on, Deathspell Omega rehearsing for whatever reason. They don't play live, they don't play to any others. Why do they rehearse? Because they're a band, but they don't have to do everything else. And if they rehearse, be it with or without a vocalist, I think at least they have more or less have to be 3. Not must have, but I think if they rehearse with guitar and drums, at least they're 2. If they're the brothers, or maybe 3 if it's the cousin, who knows? so I don't know. Actually, I don't know, but of course there is it would make sense if there is a main core, and if it's Harshyar and his brother, and maybe one more guy who is living in the area. That would make sense. Of course it would, because they have been doing this for the first Deathspell Omega was in 1998 or 99 or something like that. So yeah.
So yeah, I mean, just speculate all day on that, but. Kind of move on. Ask a question about you then. So I know that from just reading what you've written, what little I'm able to get my hands on. So I wanted to ask you, going back to Deathspell and your relation to them, how have they, if they have at all, how have they and their art kind of challenged you, changed your views on things? Has there been any sort of shift in your thinking after you encountered them?
On my hands here, it's not easy to see.
Yeah.
But there is some writing. That's a quote from my favorite black metal track ever. It's from Diabolus Absconditus. But if nothing has any meaning, there's no point in my doing anything. I love that quote, and of course the song. Can we speak about Deathspell Omega and say that they write songs? I'm a bit. I'm not always sure about that because. That's something else. It's more like journeys or sick things. Yes, Deathspell Omega has musically challenged me. I think it's the one band that has challenged me the most, and the reason is when I began to listen to music in the early 80s. I'm born in 71, and the first band that I liked as a band was U2, and after U2 it took me maybe 2 years to go to Iron Maiden. So I missed the 70s hard rock. I like Black Sabbath and Rainbow, all that, but I to really put into my heart, I jumped over it. And Judas Priest, I never heard a full album by Judas Priest yet. Everybody says I should, so maybe I should. But Iron Maiden was the one that caught my attention, and from there on I of course had the regular toured metal, like Metallica, Slayer, death metal, Morbid Angel, and then black metal, the Norwegian stuff. And also I liked the Battery and Under the Sign. I remember the first time I heard it, I thought it was shit, so I traded the LP for King Diamond Abigail, and a year later I bought my own copy of Under the Sign. so it took me some time, but you need to grow into this stuff. And all these years I always liked the stories, King Diamond. I always liked music and listened to music almost all the time, various kind of music, but I would say 80% metal in various forms, and also cheesy metal like Rhapsody that came in the mid-90s, and of course Halloween and those kind of bands. But it has always been, I wouldn't say dangerous music in the sense that you can, is anything musical dangerous in itself, or is it the way you are and how you connect with the music dangerous? I don't know, but it's always been like, much of the music has been traditional, like thrash metal is, of course there's variation, but still you have a formula. Death metal, you have a formula, but of course you have some bands that doing a little bit different things, like Nocturnus when they added the keyboard insane stuff, and Atheist when they became over technical and things like that. Right. But still, it's always been, I wouldn't say comfortable, but it's been like right. And then you had, when we came to 1991, 92, when especially when Darkthrone came out with their A Blazing Northern Sky, something was not right anymore. They did something different. Of course you had the Battery before, you had a few other bands before, like Sarcophago and even Mayhem itself with Death Crush, and that were not ordinary, but still, even with A Blazing Northern Sky, which is one of my absolutely favorite albums because of the nostalgia and I like the music itself, still it was within frames, kind of. In The Shadows of the Horns, it's not a challenging track, it's just a cool track. It's just a okay rock and roll black metal track, lasting for 10-11 minutes, but not challenging. And I have never had any music people around me that has said, listen to this and this and that, like listen to that, classical music, and then you have this avant-garde classical musics. I never had anyone telling me, listen to this, listen to that. So I've just followed the metal thing, and of course it was cool with the Udheim score when they came with the 66 International, and that was a touch of insanity, of course. That really, really caught me off guard wasn't really until I heard Diabolus Absconditus, because that track is something totally different than anything I ever heard before. I mean, Si Monumentum, it didn't really catch me the way it should have. I don't remember even if I heard it before Diabolus, and I heard Diabolus a year after it was released in 2006, not 2005. And that track has everything in it, and especially the dissonance. And the dissonance is what interested me. Why do I like the dissonance? I mean, why did they make the music so dissonant? It's almost impossible to hear, to listen to without feeling discomfort. The first 6, do you know the track by heart, I suppose?
Pretty well.
Yeah? Of course. It's okay.
It's one of the few I don't have on vinyl yet. So.
Yeah, but still, you heard it. And I mean, I got it on a CDR from a friend in Denmark. You have to listen to this track. Okay, cool, send it to me. And then I got it, and then I was catched. And in my opinion, that's scary music. First you have the 6, 7, 8 minutes which is dissonant as hell, and then you have the 4 or 5 minutes which is acoustic, but there is some discomfort there. And then you have the last part of the track which is like more, let's call it the regular black metal. and the music and the vocals are so, I don't know, they are so crushing. So that's when you ask if something has changed. That one has changed the way I listen to music, in the sense that I'm after that I'm more and more search for different things than just the regular black metal. I mean, I like Dark Funeral, but there is nothing really challenging about Dark Funeral. Dark Funeral is okay, it's good black metal, but it's not challenging. There are very few albums that are challenging, but The Time by Abigor is definitely challenging, and Urdu Ad Kao by Mayhem is very challenging. And then there are these bits and pieces here and there, but there are just a few that are really, really challenging. And of course, the most challenging release for me is Fas.
Right.
That's one of a kind. There is nothing like Fas. There is no album before that. There's no album after that. And I think they managed to come up with things like that because they have listened to a lot of different stuff than just Norwegian black metal, to put it like that. They have searched for things to put, and then made it their own, put it into music, and then make it their own.
Sure. Yeah, I think they do use the vehicle of black metal in, like you said, in a completely different way. I mean, whenever I first heard, I'm trying to think, so the first release that I actually heard by them would have been, I'm young, I'm only like 27, but the first,
we all started somewhere.
yeah, exactly. First release I heard by them was Drought, but that wasn't until just before the Syndicate of Molten Bones came out, so latecomer here. But whenever I heard Drought and I read the lyrics and I read a little bit about them, I mean, that challenged me in a way that nothing else had before. So I went to Catholic school.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
What was it you said that you heard first?
Drought. EP.
Drought. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Yes.
By them.
Yes.
By them.
Yes. Drought.
Yeah. I mean, I had been into black metal before, and I thought it was all interesting. And I loved the aesthetic. I loved the music. But whenever I heard Deathspell Omega's Drought, there was something about that was so it was so serious. Like, it meant something, and it just blew my mind. I mean, that was the first time that I had heard a piece of music and been legitimately like terrified. It was like, I don't understand. I don't understand anything about these people. I don't know what they're trying to say. But I know that it's something that's completely beyond anything that I've been accustomed to in my entire life. And so in a sense, they kind of, through that release, and then through listening to Synarchy and then the rest of their discography after that, in conjunction with my studies I've always been interested in theology and philosophy, those things. So in conjunction with all of that, starting to really delve into their lyrics and connect dots all over the place. Like, I'm seeing a reference to this and a reference to this and a reference to this. And it just proliferates all over the place, and they're drawing from every different religious tradition. And I mean, it's so in this sense, I guess it would have changed at least my thinking process, I guess, in a really big way. Like, I had never, it made thought more dangerous in a way, I think, for me, because it showed that, according to their worldview, from what I take from it, it's that undergirding everything humanity has written, there's always been some sort of impulse behind it that we may not be conscious of, that kind of thing. And the idea that unconscious impulse could not be something that would fit into the the sort of happy-go-lucky, Christian theistic paradigm that we think of nowadays, but something far more abstract, perhaps malevolent. That was something that just blew my mind. It disturbed me to my core, and I needed more of it. I mean, that was it for me. So I mean, I guess that's how they would have challenged me, and kind of I don't know what I believe, so to speak, about any of that, but I just they made me think in that way.
Yeah.
But so moving on a little bit from that, now I know one of your favorite bands is Abigor as well. So how did you come in contact with them? How did you decide to set up the interviews? And it seems like there was a lot of preparation that went into those interviews. So how do you personally just go about preparing for something that big?
If you think about the Imhotep number 11, or if you think about the interviews, each interview in itself?
Well, really each interview. Yeah. I mean, because Deathspell, there was obviously kind of preparation was what years in the making.
A little bit.
Yeah.
No, but I understand what you're asking. About Abigor, the first interview I did was back in 1997. So it's a story in that sense. But they stopped for a few years. After they released an album in 2001, the only album that I don't like at all. And then they were silent, totally silent for 6 years. Because the band had I think they had ended the band. And then they started again with Fractal Possession. I think it's in 2007. A very good year for music in my taste, at least. And I have been in touch on and off with Thomas from Abigor. And that's a bit challenging as well to when I prepare for interviews, because I rarely do interviews like, these listening sessions. They have these bigger bands like Dimmu Borgir and stuff. I have been to a few of them. I'm not really, of course it's easier now that I know the guys and have been listening to their music for so many years. It's easy to meet up and listen to the album once and then write a few questions and maybe the lyrics if I get them, and then just come up with a conversation. It's almost like meeting an old friend. But when it's bands that I don't know so much about, or their first album, or been a long time since the last album, then it's quite difficult actually to start going, because nowadays I think I don't want to make easy questions, if you could put it like that. I want every question to be not better than the former question, but I want every question to make sense. There are very few yes or no questions, to put it like that. And of course Deathspell Omega is very special in that sense, because that is something, it's a bit different than the rest, because there's so much strange working with it, and also communication. But most bands, it's of course they release an album and then I sit down, listen to the music. I listen a lot to the music most of the time, and then I don't know if you listen to that Shoe Dog a bit if you had time for that, but I got that a while ago, and I sat myself down and started to work on the question. I spent like 1 week on 20 questions. Even though I know the guys, I mean the main guy, or there are two main guys, and the one guy, he's been our vet for the dogs. So I know him, I know he has a family, kids and everything like that, but I don't ask about that, because I think of the art as the art itself. So then I go into the music, I go into the lyrics, I go into maybe former interviews. It's the regular thing to do, but I also always think, what do I want to know? That's why I never could work or have been interested in working in a big magazine. Like, if my English were perfect, I could write for Metal Hammer because I'm so interested in music. But I would never have been interested in that, because I could never sit down with a band and just do the questions that the reader would like to know. Because I don't care about the reader. I only care about my own thoughts in the music and when I do the questions. And do you know progressive rock? Are you interested in that, progressive metal, or is that?
I was more in my earlier years, but I still occasionally push back on.
There is this one guy from the Netherlands. He does this big thing he's been doing for 25 years called Arion. It's like rock operas. He's having 10-12 different vocalists on each, more or less every album, and the new album is coming out now in a month, and he told me he wanted to be a movie. And when I prepare for such an interview, I must think about what I want. How can I understand what he's doing? And when I speak, with him or other guys. That's easier when I do the eye-to-eye interviews or phone interviews instead of just sending a few questions by mail. Then I have to think about what they want with the album. I'd say that, okay, when I listen to this, it feels an example though. I told him that okay, there's this groovy song which with a very cool bass line. When I heard that, it's like it sounds familiar. There's something that I can't really put my words on it, but it sounds a bit familiar, and I like the way. And then I started to explain what I think about it, and I figured out that after all these years, that's what musicians like to hear. They like to hear that I have invested some thought and mind and into the music, instead of just, okay, what do you mean with those bass lines? What do you mean with that song? How was it to have Dee Snider, which is actually singing one song on his new album? What was it like to have Dee Snider? No, those kinds of questions are he probably would answer them well because his experience as an interviewee. But when I tell him that, and then I thought that and blah blah blah, and that's connected with this, then he's like, I can almost hear in the phone that he is starting almost jumping because he likes the way that I come to the questions or the question, just like you did now when you started to talk about your thoughts on many things, and then finally you come with a question. Musicians like that. I'm dead sure that if I had 1 hour or maybe 2 with, for example, James Hetfield from Metallica, I'm so confident on this thing because I've been doing it for 20-25 years that I would do one of the best interviews ever if I got the time to prepare, because he would probably like to talk about that instead of just a regular thing like, so how was it to be when you prepared Saint Anger and you were drunk all the time, and how was it to come out of that, and why is the drum Lars Ulrich, how many times do we have to reply to why is the drum on the Saint Anger like it is? I mean, come on, be inventive, come up with something new, and if you don't come up with something new, at least pretend that you mean it. I rarely, it's very few interviews that really get me going, but I must admit that the last maybe 3-4 years after I did Imhotep 11, I was like, okay, now I'm back, I want to do this. I hate everything after doing the interviews, like writing, like putting a sign together, everything like that. I never liked it, but I have done it. Maybe that's why it's not so very good, because I don't invest 100%. I do that in the preparations and in the communication, and after that it's boring. But that's why I so like that Niklas and Bardo methodology or something like that. I don't know how to pronounce it, but when Bardo, there you go. When Bardo, when he came along with his interviews, and the way he writes them, and the way he invests so much time in the preparations and in language, it's just the way I would have done it. And he do it with enthusiasm, with thought, and of course the signs are brilliant and everything like that. And it has actually made me think I don't need to do an exercise because he already does it for me. It sounds strange, but so it's brilliant.
Yeah, something I really like about Bardo, he doesn't do it in the Deathspell interview, and I don't know if it's a sign of respect because maybe they're so big, at this point within that community. I assume that they're well respected. So Nicholas tends to kind of give counter jibes, at people who are being a little too satanic or a little too out there in their beliefs. If you've ever noticed, I think he even did this with Thomas from Avigor. I think he did the same thing. Thomas is a pretty zealous guy whenever you read him, which makes for a great read. I will say that.
Yeah, of course.
Read him. But yeah, he'll throw in like some little jives, like make fun of people a little bit, which is something that you don't really see. And I think that's interesting. He's got some balls on him. Yeah. He doesn't do that in the Deathspell interview.
No, I think that it depends on what they agreed upon, but I think the first interview he did was question answer. While normally he would write it more like kind of an article thing, yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know why it became like that, but maybe the Deathspell Omega guys had some saying in this. I don't know.
Yeah. So I definitely want to ask a bigger question, but before I get to that one, how did you start to actually get in contact with them? I know that you had told me that it was around about 2007 you started to have contact after you wrote your FOSS review, which I really enjoyed, by the way. And I love the Furnaces review too. I don't know.
What did you say?
Your review of FOSS and of Furnaces. Yeah, both of those. I thought they were fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, of course. But after 2007, I guess, or during that time, you got in contact with them because they had read that. So how did that communication begin to take place? Did they contact you? Did you contact them for a proxy, like the label? How did that occur?
I remember in 2005, I probably already got it back in around 2000, the first album, as a kind of a promo. I don't think Norma ever did promos. Northern Heritage, I don't think they did promos either. They just sent out the CD to some people. But I never paid attention to the first two Deathspell Omega releases. And then in 2005 I got the Kenosi CD, which I sent to one of the others for writing. Strange thing, but it does happen. And then I got the Diabolus thing, and after that I started to really listen to what Deathspell Omega had done before. And of course the interview from 2004 and everything like that. And they started up in 1998 or 99 with the Deathspell Omega, and then Hero Horn before that. And I suppose that they had liked my writing, my very naive. It was not good English or anything, but maybe they felt that I was always been enthusiastic. I put my heart and soul into this. Of course I should have spent way more time in the language itself and in the English writing when I was maybe 25. I started Imhotep in 1994 and the first release was in 1995, and of course it's shitty and everything like that, but everybody has to start somewhere. But I'd never really paid attention to the language, which is of course something that I kind of regret today, but what can you do? It wasn't until like around 2000 I started to pay attention, but my god, when I go back and read something I wrote then, yes, you know, there are some room for improvements, both in the writing and especially in the writing, but also in the way I was thinking. But that's the way it is. And I think the first kind of let's put it as a review, that was 2007. With of course the fast one that you have read. I also did one with Elend. I don't know how to Elend. I did write something based on my vision of the music and also of Mayhem, but that was in Norwegian, so it's not easy to read. It was a poem actually, because I started to trust more what I saw in front of me. I started to see things when I listened to music instead of just listening to the music. That's especially when the Furnaces, which is the last review I've written, I think, that one gave me all these pictures, and that's why it's written in a very special way. And so I think they liked my writing back then, and it has improved in recent years because I trust my visions more than I did back then. And yeah, but so they contacted me in 2007 asking if I was interested in listening to the new album and into listening to the music, and maybe do an interview. And I was like, yeah, okay, cool. I didn't know much about Deathspell Omega. I didn't know it was a cult thing already from Simon Dementum. I was in those years. I was like, I had stopped doing the printed magazines, and I just listened to music. And then I got FOSS. I got FOSS as a 1 track, not 6 tracks. And I remember in those days that I listened to the album in 1.5 months. I think I listened to it maybe 2 to 4 times every single day. I listened to it and I didn't understand shit. I mean, there is nothing there to grab hold to. There are no verse, no chorus, no refrains, no bridge, no solos, there's nothing there. It's just something that I can't describe. It's just so insane. So I spent those 1.5 months, May and half of June, to listen to the album. I listened to it everywhere. I almost didn't. I went to work, of course, and after work I was alone. I was single at that time, and I didn't meet people. I just was at home listening to music. That's what I did for 1.5 months. And there were 2 other albums I listened to at the time because of some interview thing I did, but also this one. And I spent that 1.5 months, and the review, if you can call it a review for the FAS, it took me maybe I guess 2 weeks to write and adjust and put together and take away again and start over again and blah blah blah. So it did something to me, and I think maybe the guys felt it, that there was something, because they have read stuff that maybe they thought, okay, this isn't very well written, but this guy has at least something there, and my enthusiasm, as I said. So they asked me for an interview, and I even wrote questions. I wrote over more than 30 questions, and I sent it to them, and they said that they replied to it. They began to reply. So I thought about, okay, now I'm gonna print Imhotep again. God damn it, I don't want to, but I had to if they reply, because I started to understand that there was something special with Deathspell Omega, and nobody knew who they were and what is going on. So I sent the questions, and they replied, but then they began to write me that they didn't feel it was the right time after all. And I guess in the end, first of all, the questions are not that good. There are, out of those more than 30 questions, there are maybe 2 or 3 that survived in the final result.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So there was something there, yeah, because when I read, I didn't read the questions until like last year, and I never took a look at it again, because I didn't want to make the same questions in other interviews. I don't know why. It just was like that, and they are not good. So one thing is that maybe they thought it wasn't good enough, or that after all, FAS is just the second part in the trilogy. So why not wait until the trilogy was done? I guess that's the reason why. I've never been told why we just stopped it, except that it didn't feel right after all. And then after the trilogy was done, we Drought. Drought is the appendix to the trilogy, the final appendix. And then it took 8 years, 7-8 years until they started. And why? I don't know. But we had communication on and off about this and that and everything, and yeah, life and death and everything. So I don't know why. I still don't know why they asked me. I know why they asked Niklas, because what he has proven the last 3-4 years with his Bardo is it's so excellent. There are only 2 fanzines or signs that are up to that level, and that's of course Isten. Have you ever read Isten? The Finnish, their writing is way beyond, but they're also it's a bit, they write and they provoke, and they write so well. And there is another one, it's called Quadrivium. It's so brilliant, also Finnish. They have spent much time on the language, god damn it, but they stopped both of them. Or Isten, they do maybe things every now and then, but not like the signs they did back in those days. So yeah, my simple reply is that I don't know. I don't know why they contacted me back in 2007. But then we have been on and off. And there is a special thing also. It's so strange. I'm not a part of this collective, by the way. I'm not a part in the second or third ring or nothing like that. I'm just an observer. But there are times, there could be like, I remember before Molten Bones, the Synarchy of Molten Bones, I remember it's been a while since we had any communication, and then suddenly I get this like feeling or picture in my head that okay, so I just write and say okay, now I feel that it's very close to the new album coming out, and then it's like yes, it is, And do you want to listen to it now? I think it will be ready to listen to now, like maybe in a month or something like that. It's so strange, and this has happened more than once. It's not because it's just a feeling I get.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah, there's a little bit of synchronicity.
I don't know.
I don't know why either. So it's interesting that you say that, because I still want to get to the question that I really want to ask you. But it is interesting that you say that about that preemptive sort of feeling. Right before that interview dropped, the first Bardo interview, when nobody knew what was going on, but after Furnaces came out, so we had been working 8 months, 9 months maybe on this project, just doing research, writing, theorizing, what have you, phone calls. But we had come to a decision on the title of the book, what we wanted it to be called, Summa Diabolica, and so forth. And we had come across a lot of different articles and a lot of different books, and just general theories about the way in which we felt that they were taking their music and their sort of conceptual direction, and what they were trying to say. Because a lot of people at the time were thinking, "Oh, these guys are fascists. This is a fascist manifesto."
You think about Furnaces?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, I mean, if you read it too literally, I guess you could see that. But
put the asphalt, the boots on the asphalt and everything. Yes.
Yeah, and we had the complete opposite feeling. We're like, that is absolutely not the case, and we have a pretty good handle on the reasons why we think that. But yeah, so we had just come to a bunch of conclusions, made the title of the book, and I think it was 2 days later they dropped this interview out of nowhere. And lo and behold, they mentioned that they consider their work, their own Summa Diabolica, and they mentioned a lot of these different authors that we were looking at the time. I think it was Shoshana Zuboff, Age of Surveillance Capitalism. Just a lot of different stuff was going on at the time, and it just kind of lined up. So it's funny you mentioned that, because we had the same feeling too. We're like, I don't know if this is synchronicity, if this is just but it's odd how much lined up. And then whenever your interview dropped, a lot of the things that we had, continued in that time period and uncovered and been working on really hard, that we had pulled out of there that was never specifically mentioned, specifically like Friedrich Schelling, his ideas on the nature of the divine and things like that, and Spinoza, and they mentioned all these things in the Bardo interview, your interview, so it shows, at the very least, whatever it is, coincidence or anything else, that feels like we're moving in the right direction. So it's a whole feeling to see those things kind of line up, because we have put hundreds of hours talking and thinking and texting and writing documents. I have 115 Google Docs on here that I just counted just on this project alone. So it's taking on a life of its own. Yeah, so anyway, I wanted to ask you this question. So it's a broad one, so feel free to answer it however you want, but maybe we can hone in a little bit more in a couple minutes. But are there things in the interview, or just not even in the interview, just in your communications with them, that didn't make it in, but that you wish did make it in? And was there anything that was, and obviously you wouldn't be able to say exactly what these things would be, but was there anything that was a little they felt was too revealing or anything like that, they then retracted, or else not to put it?
There was one version I got in November 2019, which is which is quite different from the final version. And that version, we discussed it, and I translated it into Norwegian and put it in. I am writing in a Norwegian magazine, which is called Scream magazine. I like to write in Norwegian as well, so I put those interviews there. It turned out to be 5 pages, should have been 6 because they used so small font I can't even read it. When you get close to 50, your eyes start to things start to happen. Yes, and so that interview is a bit different. I can't remember now what are the differences, but the final interview is bigger. It's more elaborate, and also changed things here and there, removed some things, put some things back, because I think they have revisioned this. I'm gonna tell you in a closer to the end. We were supposed to publish it by the end of December, because we wanted 2019 to be the year the interviews were out, and then probably silence for the next 20 years again. I don't know, but. Still, there was something that didn't feel right, and they sent me a new version of, I think it was February, and there even was something that would be like, what? Which had to do with the music itself, and the closing on the interview was supposed to be like we want these kind of vocalists to send us the demos kind of thing. And I was like, what the fuck is this? What's going on? Because they were looking for something special. And okay, alright. I had no idea what they were talking about. I just read it and thought, okay, well, we'll see. And of course, always, give us a couple of weeks because I have the feeling that they are thinking and rethinking and changing and stuff, probably the same way they do with music. So I think they left or abandoned, as they say in English. They abandoned the idea. So that's why it's not there in the final version. And then there were a couple of versions more, but just closer and closer. And then I always did the proofreading, reading every sentence carefully to double check things, to make sure there are no mistakes. I think now in the final version there are no mistakes. I'm thinking about the grammar or the words, and maybe there are, but I haven't seen any. I think we have managed to put everything correct. So it's been a process, even the last year. And here comes the point: is these interviews, the 3 interviews now, they are not to be seen in connection with Deathspell Omega, in the sense that they add. I think he even wrote something about that in the first they did with Bardo, that they add to they're meant to be seen as a thing in connection with. Maybe they could just have sit there and written their own like book or something like that without the questions. I have no idea. Maybe they needed the questions to get going, to start. I don't know. I don't know why. I don't even know why they decided in the end that okay, now is the time. But at least they did. So everything is to be seen together with everything, which is kind of a stupid thing to say, but and that's the way I think they work with everything, with the music. I got the feeling that they work with the music the same way. They write, they rewrite, they send it back and forth to each other now that we have the internet, and check out. And then he said something about Fast, if you remember one of the replies, where I asked about the drummer and something else about the Fast album, and he wrote, or they wrote, or however they do it, that in the end every note has a meaning, which to me, I don't know music. I can't play music or anything like that. To me, that's so abstract that I have no idea what they're talking about. Okay, every note has a meaning. What the fuck? Come on. Okay.
Yeah. So
that's C fuzz. Okay, cool. That's no, but to them, when they write it, they probably see and feel things and know what they want into, and they work with the text just as you say. You have 115 documents for the book. They probably have the same, or maybe less, or maybe more. I have no idea, because they spend so much time in writing an album. It takes 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, from the if I remember correctly, you have Paracletus in 2010, Drought 2012, and then you have Molten Bones in 2016, and then Furnace in 2019. And they have even made a couple of more albums that they never release, because the Synarchy of Molten Bones, there were one album already written, as far as I understood, which is like, I think they're always creative, but it has to feel right before they go outside the ring. or the collective. Because if not, maybe there is this one guy, Christian or Hashiar, which probably is the same guy, or if it's three guys, they probably have the saying, the French core, the final saying. Okay, now it feels right. And they work with the art. You mentioned Draught. There is a lot of things in that cover for Draught because it's a collection of different art put into one picture. And then so they probably spend so insanely much time on everything. That's probably why it takes so much time for it to release. I don't think they could release one album every second month, to put it like that. So, but what was the question?
So the question was: is there anything that really stuck out to you that didn't make it in that would have been like important as far as maybe beliefs are concerned?
No. No, I can't remember. I haven't really read the first version and the last final version so like next to each other and seen, oh, they removed that part, oh, they included that. I haven't that, but I think much is the same. But of course there are different things. So and different metaphors or different examples.
Sure.
But nothing special that I can think of.
Okay. Yeah, so do you have time? Do you have a couple more minutes to...
Yeah, I mean, I'm not doing anything until like still 40 minutes. It's you who are going to maybe use it or maybe not.
Okay, alright, sounds good. Now, the purpose of our entire project, we all have different purposes for why we're doing this, but the shared sort of like vector is that we just want to understand them, their beliefs, more or less, and really get their worldview. I mean, I think that's, besides the music itself, which is just absolutely incredible, and the artwork, of course, I mean, the beliefs are intimately tied in with all of this. And I feel like none of this would exist without this driving force that they're trying to convey. And of course they convey it in really clandestine terms. I mean, it's never really clear exactly what it is that they think, because things seem to shift and evolve and change, which is to be expected in a band like this. But I see a difference between nowadays. I see a difference between what I think they believe, generally speaking, about the function of the satanic, image, as opposed to somebody like Thomas from Abercrombie. It seems to me that he's very much still a devil worshipper. I think there's an interview on their website with you. And I believe one of the quotes that he said is that for him, the devil is the essence beyond physis, beyond nature. And he also said in the Imhotep interview that this world, effectively what it sounds like is a Gnostic idea, that this world is controlled by a demiurge, right? Some false creator god. And so that kind of gives the impression that there's a distinction between two different divine forces. For Deathspell, it doesn't seem like it's that way anymore. It seems like, to me, their devil worship of 2004 has shifted into the utilization of some specific power that human beings in some way connect with or create on their own that can actually and should be overcome. To me, it seems like they have a different notion entirely of what it is that they're communicating with, or that's communicating through them, what have you, in their heart, than somebody like TT. So my question to you then is, for that long framing, is that what do you think? I mean, just generally. I mean, just from talking with these guys and knowing what you know. I mean, what do you think? I mean, I know it's speculation.
Yeah. Do you think about the Deathspell Omega or Abigail or both, or?
Specifically Deathspell.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, there is one thing that is written in the final interview, at least. It's about they challenge themselves, because if they don't, there's no point. It's always about challenging and taking things further and going further to the extremes. It's about, if you have this thought, if you do something like this, then you must challenge that to do something, to see if there is something else that should be done instead. And if you think about from 2004 to 2012, which is the big concept, I think that concept had the 3 main albums had their main themes, and now the Synarchy, I'm not really sure because I haven't really got so much into that and the lyrics there. It's a strange beast. I'm not fully understanding it, but I need to give it more time, of course. And then you have the Furnaces, which is quite different. It's more human in my book. The way I view it, it's more human and humanity, and it's about there's a lot about humanity in that book and in that album. I mean, of course, there are also a lot about humanity. Everything is about humanity and the way we as humans are or should be or are not, or what we do and what we don't do, and religion and everything. But the new album is more specific in a way, and they are challenging. Because that is, as you said yourself earlier, some people thought it was a fascist album, and the aesthetics is pretty, it's pretty fascist in a way, and that there should be an elite that is running everything, and that's how dictators think, I guess. the elite should be that one person. Probably that's the same thing Trump thinks in the USA now, but he probably thinks he should run everything. No, but so it's a different beast, and I love the lyrics. I love the lyrics of that album. It's easier to understand in the sense if you just read it. While the former ones, come on, to read Kenosi, I have, what the fuck are they talking about? You have to invest so much time to get really into what they are speaking about. You have to read things that are not only lyrics to get not even a full picture, because the full picture is probably only the core that knows. I don't know how to answer such a question. I don't think they believe in anything that you can say, you can sit down with them. Let's say there are 3 persons in the main core. You sit down with them, and they say, I believe in this, and I believe in that, and he believes in that. I don't think it works like that with them. I think they're always challenging whatever anyone is saying. Whatever anyone is saying is right, they are challenging that. Whenever somebody says something is wrong, they are challenging that. In their own world, of course. And also with the music, I think the music is challenging. When we expect, I didn't expect the new album to be like that at all. Of course, then again, what the fuck do you expect? But I did not expect the video track, Adharma.
Oh yeah.
Come on, where did I get that from? Suddenly they have a track which is quite easy to listen to in Deathspell Omega terms, which is not chorus, but still it's like groovy kind of.
Right.
Where did that come from? I've never done anything like that before to that extent. So I think they're always looking for different things. And if I understood the Bardo interviews correct, they are rehearsing. And by rehearsing, it means that they are doing what other bands are doing, maybe even exchanging ideas, try out different things. And who knows what comes from that, because that's a different thing that maybe they have done before. At least the way I interpret it. So musically, they are still challenging probably most of all themselves and the collective in itself. I guess that's why, as they wrote something about, we spoke about that earlier, they want people who are different, who are contrasts, and they want to see what comes out of it. And he said, and he wrote in the final interview something that I think is interesting. Today, in 2020, 2019, 2020, there are so many musicians who can play. They can play whatever they play. And I think some guys showed me a drum cam of a guy who is playing the whole, is it Fast album on drums? I don't remember.
Yeah, Caesar.
He played everything. Yeah. I mean, it's impressive. So they could hire whatever guy. I mean, maybe even Rune from Mayhem or Ultimas now. Blasphemer, because he is one of the absolutely best guitarists ever. they could probably hire someone like him or somebody else who could do this and that, and technically because they want that song to be like that and that part to be like that, and they could get some, even if they wanted female vocals, they could probably get some who sings exactly the way they want. But the way I interpret what they wrote in the interview is that they are not looking for technicality, because there are so many who are technical. They are looking for what lies beyond, and what do you sacrifice to make it worth. And what do you sacrifice? Sometimes I think, do I feel that they have sacrificed anything at all? I mean, how do I know that they sacrificed? How do I know that maybe they are so good that they just spend a couple of months writing an album, and then they write some lyrics that are pretty cool, and they spend maybe altogether 4 months on a year, but they wait 2 years before they release it, and the rest of the time they go to work and they sit home with the children watching the telly, and I mean, I don't think they do that, but what do I know? So I don't know how they think. I have no idea how they think about things like that. But opposite attracts, and in the end, they need to get the energy out from it. As we talked about Mikko, yeah, he has fascist views. Maybe he's even a Nazi for all I know. I haven't communicated with him on that. And then you have maybe in the other spectrum, you have maybe a guy from who knows, whatever, not maybe Christian band, but Catholic. Maybe there are some Catholic bands. Maybe there are some who are, maybe they have a priest when they go work with the lyrics, for all I know, and they sit there and they communicate, or they write to each other by mail, or they communicate and they say things, and then they discuss that, and in the end, okay, this we can use for that thing, and I have no idea. So what they believe in, who knows? They are French, as obviously, because they write that they are a French trio. So they probably believe in the Eiffel Tower and the Tour de France, and that the French are the best and the most sophisticated people in the world, while the English are shit. And they hope that because there are this Champions League thing going on now, and they're coming to the semifinals, and there are 2 French teams and 2 German teams left. So I guess the French are just, if they win, they will be like with the nose up. Well, but if the Germans win, we are like, yeah, we crushed you. So they're probably just like that. No, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I don't think anybody does know, and I think that's part of the point, and part of the reason why I am so drawn to them. I think why so many people are. It's the anonymity, right, in conjunction with something that is just amorphous. They say in your interview that if you take something one step too far, it loses its magic. So if you spell something out a little bit too much, you automatically lose what makes it special. You know, I mean, you don't want to over-explain art, which is kind of what I'm doing in my book anyway. But, maybe not the best approach to take, but I'm doing it anyway because I feel I have to. But yes, I mean, I think you hit on something really important. It's that they sort of have just a general adversarial stance. And I think this is what they mean whenever in the 2019 Hardo interview they said that they are fundamentally Bataillean by nature. I don't know if you know George Bataille, but he was vehemently anti-communist and anti-fascist in France, at the time of World War II. So I mean, that was an incredibly hard position to be in, to be ideologically opposed to both of the competing factions, both the invaders and those at home. And I think his mode of artistic and intellectual transgression is specifically their most cherished belief, you could say, maybe, or method. Specifically the belief that things must always be challenged and torn down if they're not up to snuff, effectively. I don't think they're complete nihilists in any sense. I do think that they have, because I mean, just like it says on your arms, if there's no meaning, why should I do anything else? And clearly they do a lot. So there has to be something that's really driving them to do this. And I think, I mean, it's all speculation, but I think part of it is just this drive to make themselves models for how they think the world should be, just through constant challenge, through constant aggressive deconstructive impulses. So I don't know. I mean, I think that's just one kind of general driving them. Whereas somebody else, I think maybe a lot of other people, even on their label, seem to be relatively fixed, at least on a firm set of like a couple beliefs. And I think theirs have changed. 2004, they said they were devil worshippers, and 2019, they say that Satan's an egregore. Do completely different things, you know. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what they believe, but I think it's more of a methodology. They deconstruct Satanism itself too. Goes against them, or goes against their genre. It's funny you mentioned Catholicism too, because I've long held, for a while, I had this notion that perhaps they were Catholic, because if you can read their entire discography, even a good deal of C Monumentum, if you can do enough mental gymnastics, you can read the whole thing as being essentially like a reiteration of Dante's Inferno, of the descent into the abyss in order to, you know, arise out of scoria, as they say in 2018. So I mean, that was another cool thing. I was like, man, are they subverting the entire thing by being Catholic? Like, can't keep a handle on what they're doing anymore.
Somehow I don't think so, but it's an interesting.
I don't think that's the case either. But
it's an interesting thought, of course.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely don't think that's the case now. Definitely aberrant in their spiritual.
Yeah. They probably like champagne. They probably like wine. You know, they're French. Maybe they even wake up in the morning at 4 and go to the nearest bakery to get their I don't know what they call it, baguette or something. No, I don't know.
Whatever the French do. Yeah. I'm a dumb American. I don't know what they do.
No.
Yeah, I mean. I don't know. I mean, there are other questions. Maybe we could save it for another time, because I know you have to start getting ready here. But yeah, thanks for taking the time to speak with me, man. I really appreciate it.
I need to add one thing. Yeah, I need to add one thing, which is interesting. And I mean, the way you ask your questions, it's interesting because you ask them the same way that I ask questions when I do conversations. Really good. I have been thinking lately, what now? And it's not about the title of the Deep Purple album, but what now? Because it's so strange. This has been a 13-year-long journey, of course, on and off, leading to the interview. And I always thought that, okay, when the interview is done, I don't think I will. Then I just will stop and just start to listen to music as a fan, and just that. But of course, then again, I have done this for 25 years, so it seems I can't stop, because I still do interviews, and I think I will continue for a while yet. There are still albums coming out that are interesting, that are kind of new. I think that if you listen carefully and had time to listen carefully to the Shoe Dog album I sent you a couple of times, if you listen to that a couple of times, they are doing something. I don't know if it's intentional, because I know the guy, one of the main guys. I know both of them, but the one who's writing most of the music, he's just a regular guy. He's just a guy who have a normal life, the average life. Children, you know, go to work, and then he makes this insane, strange music. And all their albums are good, but this one is very good, and it's ugly. There's no light in there.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's so there's no verse, no chorus, no. It's just one track, 44 minutes. Mm-hmm.
And there's even that cyber interlude at one point. I mean,
yeah, a little bit. Yeah. And it's like, okay, why do they do this? I'm very curious. I get the replies from them in Norwegian, so sadly you can't read it, but in Norwegian in a few days, because we have a deadline in next Thursday for the new magazine. And when something like that comes up, something that is, even today, when black metal, there are some bands that manage to take it a step, not further, but a different step, because yeah, of course you can hear that it's black metal and everything, but there is something that I really can't put my finger on with that album, and it's very rarely that I got that feeling anymore. Of course, I've I'm so close to 50. I've heard thousands of albums, but still, it's so impressive when something strange comes out.
Yeah.
But still, today, in 2020, there are no albums that are like Foss.
Right.
There is nothing like Foss. Foss is out there. Foss is when you have favorite albums. I can mention 10 albums that are so good and fantastic, and if I got on a desert island, I would love to have them, bring them along. And then there is Foss, which is above that or below that. Or I don't understand that album. I hate that album, but I love that album. It's everything. It's so fucked up. I don't understand it, and I don't even want to use it as a parameter for other albums because it can't be compared to anything else. It's so strange, and that's what I'm been searching more for: albums that are unique and have their own thing. Shoe Dog is not there. It's a very good album, but still, it's, could put it like this, still it's, it's black metal and they are using some of the same things that you have heard before. But Foss, there's nothing like it. That's impressive. So what now? Okay, I still have a dream that there will come something. I mean, Paracletus is great, Synarchy is great, the Furnace is great, but Foss is still a level up.
Right.
It's so strange.
That album will definitely go down, I think, as probably one of the best, most innovative and genre-defining albums in all of black metal. Whether or not you consider it like black metal or not, I mean, I
don't know.
but that's kind of the point, isn't it? I mean, it destroys every preconception.
Yeah, it does.
In C Monumentum, I mean, you can still hear. It's still a black metal.
Yeah, it is.
But man, Foss hits, and it's just absolute chaos.
Yeah, it is.
It's not a genre. It doesn't need one.
It's so strange. I can't.
It is.
I can't. And
I think it's just like that. Whatever it is that they're tapping into, whether it's just the unconscious, the human mind, or if it's actually something spiritual, whatever they're tapping into, I mean, it shows itself as like palpable and real on these albums. That's what scares me about them. It's like there's something about this that it's an imagination. Like there's something going on, and they've hit it. Yeah,
they have for some strange reason, and I'm not even saying that it's the best album or anything like that, because I'm dead sure that we could put some albums next to it and say, okay, but this album is so much better written, and things are they are coherent. Things are combined. It makes sense. Foss doesn't make sense at all.
Right.
In my book, I don't know, but of course, then again, it is about the fall of man. That's why the cover is like it is, and maybe it's just their musical vision of the fall of man.
The very descendant of the abyss, something like that. Have you ever seen? I'm in contact with Timo Katola a little bit. I didn't ask this. I asked him about a Heraclitus thing that I saw the other day, and that I thought may have inspired him, and it didn't. But I'm almost positive this one did. Have you ever seen the statue of Prometheus?
Maybe not.
So let me see if I can send it to you real quick. Because this, I can guarantee you, is something that conceptually kind of captures, I think, their view of man, maybe the divinity of man, and why it is that the album looks the way that it does. No, it's not sharing there. I'll share it to you on Messenger later. I think you'll see that it's. I think there's definitely that mythological connection going on there, though. It's just, but whatever it is, I mean, like you said, that album is fantastic, and I can't see where the whole genre is going. I mean, there are great acts. I mean, everybody on Norma Evangelium is fantastic, No Life, what have you. I mean, and they're all doing something different in their own way, but it just seems like there was something that was just channeled in those couple of Deathspell albums. It almost can't be replicated nor should it be. Maybe it should just stay that way.
But thank you very much for the conversation itself. It's brilliant. It's very nice. I mean, I love to talk about music, so I very rarely do that. And yeah, it was very nice and very good questions, as I said. And yeah, it's very interesting.
My first interviews.
Yeah, it's very interesting to do it. And if you find something, I will send you the recording. And if you find some use of it, use it. And if not, I mean, I'm just a layman. I'm not a scholar, you know. I'm not a scholar on Deathspell Omega or anything. I'm just a layman. So use it if you want to, and if not, use. I do look forward to reading your book and writings anyway. So
thank you.
Yeah,
appreciate it.